Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is one of my favorite animated movies of all time, and it was a huge turning point in the realm of animation. It pushed the boundaries of this medium so much, and it went down as one of the best comic book movies of all time. So when the trailers came out for the sequel, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse became my most anticipated movie of 2023. And now, after watching the film, I can safely say that it delivers on all the hype and buzz that everyone had going into the film. I maybe even say it exceeds those expectations. This movie is fantastic, and I know I'm not the only one who has this opinion. Animation is just at a really high point right now, with the release of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish last December. And now this film. This will be a spoiler-free review, but if you haven't seen it yet, just go watch it first, before you get spoilers for the movie from social media. First thing to talk about, this movie is just so visually stunning. Like, if you thought the first Spider-Verse film looked great, this movie takes that animation style and cranks that up, experimenting with even more and more animation styles, featured in some truly extraordinary sequences. The animation is so smooth, and it fits so well with the action, and also the characters and universes. Like, seriously, every universe in this movie has its own distinct and creative styles. I especially like the animation for Gwen's world, and there's this one emotional scene in the second half where the animation and color change throughout the moment, which conveys the character's emotion, and it's just unlike anything I've ever seen. There are so many visually outstanding sequences, especially the fight scenes. They are directed so well, and you feel like you're actually part of the fight since the cinematography is so good. Every single frame of this movie is gorgeous, and it's gonna set the bar for other animated movies in the future. This is one of, if not the best looking film I have ever experienced. It's crazy how this only had like a $100 million budget and it looks this fantastic. I also really loved how they used the multiverse in this movie. They really used it to the fullest of its potential, giving us some really great unexpected cameos and surprises. This makes Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness look like the lamest movie ever. It's so fun getting to meet all of these different Spider-Men all across the multiverse with different personalities and backstories, but it never feels forced or like it's taking away from the story. All of these surprises feel natural and it fits well into the story they are trying to tell. There are some really unique and creative concepts that they introduce to us that are actually interesting, and they definitely do take advantage of the concept of the multiverse, giving us some really fun and out of this world moments. It's so refreshing to see people who actually love comic books and pop culture in general write these movies, since they know what fans want to see, and they know how to sneak in these different references. You can tell that everyone working behind this movie was determined to make it the best it can be, and it definitely paid off. The story is also super emotional and engaging. It's still a Spider-Man story at its core, and it deals with lots of heavy themes and ideas about morality and choosing who to save. I was surprised by how much of an arc Gwen gets. Like, she gets way more screen time than in the first movie, and we get to develop more of her backstory and her own world. They go into the relationship with her dad, and she gets a really complete and profound arc. Miles is also great in this film. In the first act, we can see him struggling balancing his life being both Miles and also Spider-Man, and it's splitting Miles and his parents apart. There are some really great and heavy moments with Miles and his parents that are the emotional highlights of the film. This movie is really fun, but it's also very somber when it needs to be. Spider-Man 2099 was a great antagonist. You can tell that he's a very broken man who gets misdirected by his rage and his backstory, and I'm sure we're gonna learn more about him in the next movie. Oscar Isaac does a great performance. There are some really likable Spider-Man side characters that they add here with some fun personalities like Spider-Punk. The Spot was a really surprising character for me. He gets introduced as this small-scale comedic villain of the week, as Miles calls him, but throughout the film he gets more and more powerful and menacing. Now, I didn't think Peter B. Parker was fantastic in this film. He takes more of a back seat and he isn't one of the main characters. He doesn't have a big arc or anything, but he's still fun and bounces off of the other characters very well. The only major character that I wanted more out of was Jessica Drew as Spider-Woman. She's not bad, she's fine, but she doesn't really have any presence in the story, and I wish we could have had more character moments with her and have her backstory. But other than that, all the characters in this film were great. I know the first act is slow paced, but the characters and their conflicts are just so engaging, and it's taking its time setting up all of these different plot lines. I didn't really have a problem with it, and when the movie actually gets going, it's just so fun. There are multiple actually well-written jokes and lines where my theater burst out laughing, but they never take away from the emotional core of the film. Now, I will have to warn you that this definitely is and feels like a part 1 out of a 2-part story. There is a hard cliffhanger at the end of the movie that got my entire theater yelling and screaming. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, it didn't take away from the film, and it made me more excited for the next film in this franchise, but since it had a hard cliffhanger, I know some people are gonna be a bit underwhelmed with the ending. Also, one last thing, I've seen this all over social media, so I know I'm not the only one. In the beginning of the film, the sound mixing was not very good, the music was too loud, and I could barely hear the dialogue. But I didn't have a problem with the sound mixing for the rest of the film, so that was good. Anyway, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has now become my favorite animated movie of the 2020s so far. The animation is gorgeous and unlike anything I've ever seen, with some fantastic action sequences. The music is still solid and the jokes are well written. This film takes advantage of the concept of the multiverse better than the MCU, giving us some really fun, creative cameos and surprises. You can tell that people who actually love comic books made this film. But at its core, it's still a Spider-Man story, and it has all the emotional themes and moments that we resonate with this character. Every single character is unique and likable in their own way, with Gwen and Miles having great arcs. This was such a fantastic movie, and I cannot stress enough how, if you haven't seen this movie yet, to go watch it on the biggest screen possible. Please, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. This better win Best Animated Feature at the Oscars. Please don't give it to something stupid like Pixar's Elementals. This deserves a Best Picture nomination at least. This is one of the few movies that I would give the masterpiece title to. I'll give it a 9.5 out of 10 for now. I have a few nitpicks, but if Beyond the Spider-Verse lives up to the expectations after this film, I'll bump it up to a 10 out of 10. So yeah, go watch this film please. Bye.